Dad Pod.
This is a video thing as well.
Doesn't have a name.
Podcast.
Midlife crisis.
Paddy Daddy.
Midlife crisis.
Dadcast.
That's not bad, actually.
Dadcast with Nivea Men. Try Ireland's #1 skincare brand.
You're very welcome along for this week's episode of Dadcast. All the dads are here. Nathan is here, although technically he's away. You're in Manchester, Nathan. How are you?
I am. I'm all right. How are you?
Or else you've redecorated the gaff and it looks like you're in kind of bordello style.
Yeah, maybe that's what we're going for.
All right. Well, good for you. That fourth baby's on its way. Dave, how are
Hello.
you?
Very well. Beautiful day. Summer has arrived early. Everybody should be happy.
And Adrian, are you happy?
Delighted. Absolutely ecstatic.
Good for you. Dadcast is in partnership with Nivea Men. Want to feel great in your skin? Nivea Men has you covered from sensitive, tailored skincare to cleansing and anti-age. Try Ireland's #1 men's skincare brand. How are we all this week?
Very well.
Very
Loving
well.
being a
Very,
dad
very
this
well.
week. It's been a good
Relaxed.
dad week.
We had our first night away from the kids Saturday night. First time in
Well, here we go.
Speaking of being careful,
first night that we were away from all the kids in a year and a half, probably.
This time, 10 months.
Since the no chance. Since the young
Wow. Wow.
Not no chance. Oh yeah.
They should write that on the packet.
do tell.
But anyway, your filthy minds. It was geez, it was like 24 hours, but God, we came back so relaxed. It was amazing. Should do it more often.
No, we got to blame the hotel, obviously, partly for this. Should do it all more often, Adrian. Like they left a bottle of prosecco in your room for you.
Yeah.
Like Adrian Barry with half a bottle of prosecco by 6 o'clock in the evening. You know, all bets are off.
How many bodies at that point, Nathan? Yeah.
I find that the Prosecco hangover is too much now. I can't do it.
Prosecco on its own, I think, is fine. It's the bottle of wine that follows up afterwards. That's where the issues kick in.
It's the multi-day hangover at this stage.
We were lucky enough to be able to get out Saturday night as well for a while. First time in a long time. But we found that we kind of boxed off the children chat early and then actually had conversations about things that were completely unrelated to our children, which was refreshing and great and good to know that we can still actually have an interesting discussion about something that isn't about, oh, you'll never guess what this fella said during the day, or you'll never guess what I saw him doing, or have you got that organized for next week? It was a nice departure. You can learn how to be a couple again, which is great.
It's a good sign. It means you won't get divorced when you're empty nesters.
Yes, hopefully. That is something I do
25
think
years.
about. Yes. Hopefully it is a sign that the conversation won't be completely mind-numbingly monotonous once the kids are gone. But as you keep saying, Ger, week in, week out,
Kids are going nowhere.
Yeah, we could be in our 80s by then.
There's a lot to be said for no conversation, though, right? I mean, that just
Yes.
is that like, comfortable
Just a bit of
silence, long silences. I'd be increasingly desperate for some of that in my life. No.
Yeah, the ability to be comfortable with silence is welcome, yes. But at the same time, you still do like to have a semi-interesting conversation that isn't revolving around your children every so often.
But at least it's not like, if you're like with a stranger, there's an awkward silence with a stranger and somebody feels as if they need to say something. Like when it's with your other half, it's like there's no requirement to talk. Nobody feels the need to fill the silences. Like there is a point in the evening where 3 hours in, you have people around you looking at you going, why do these people hate each other so much?
That's the couple you don't want to be, isn't it? Like generally, as you say, the first hour or two is fine because there's a lot of kids chatting there. You're getting that out of the way. It's what's next, and you've often been in a restaurant. And it's like a couple probably in their early 60s who are probably in that sort of empty nester phase, and they're sitting having their dinner, but they just sit and have their dinner together every night by themselves, and there's no children around. And now they're in a restaurant, and they like have nothing to say to each other. Are we going to be that? Are we going to be those people?
At least have a
Sounds like
row or something, right?
But maybe they're very happy.
Sounds like a Morrissey song for after his divorce. Right. You did actually want to talk about that though this week, Adrian, about creating time for yourself away from the kids. You used the word guilt alongside it in our group chat. I was like, what? What?
Are you talking about just time, Adrian time, or Adrian and wife time?
No, I think Adrian and wife time, Dave.
There's enough Adrian time.
Now that you have me talking in the third person here, which feels slightly bizarre.
Think about that.
I think,
You have to think about that.
I think time together as a couple is the thing, right? There is a guilt section to that. I have to say, not too bad. I find guilt all the time with the kids. I don't know if you're in a similar boat or not. I find it's a constant cycle of guilt. You're spending too much time with them. You're not spending enough time with them. It's like, and there's nothing on the face of it to feel in any way guilty about, because if there's any spare time going, they're the ones who get it. But that's my experience. That could be my neurosis. I accept that entirely. But I do think that notwithstanding, definitely the experience of just spending time, as Nathan said earlier, was it just in each other's company, Dave, you're making a point, where you move on from talking, you get the kids stuff out of the way, you move on from talking about that, you sometimes loop back into conversations about that, but just being in each other's company where, like, even apart from the conversation, we found not that constant, like, whir of, have you got this? Where's that thing? What do we do next? When are we going there? It's like, you don't have to be constantly interrupted by the management of 3 individuals, that you can actually just have some connection.
And were you feeling guilty about going away?
I have to admit, I wasn't too bad on that specifically. I can often feel that about various things. And as I said, it's totally irrational. There's no reason or need to feel it. They get lots of my good time. I have found that has been a part of, in my experience, has been a part of parenting for me, the cycle of guilt about things. But yeah, sorry, was that, what
Have you done anything as a parent that you really should feel guilty about?
No. I mean, apart from throwing the scooters over the park one.
I have absolutely no feeling of guilt about that.
Not really. No, I don't. And I'm not talking
about leaving in about 10 years, I'd say.
Huh?
I haven't felt guilt about not being there in about 10 years.
Have you not?
Not since probably our eldest was very young, where it was kind of, oh, I'm going away for a couple of weeks. Whereas my wife would still, I'd say, if we're going away for a night, would still be a bit, oh, we're going to out that door.
Yeah.
Out that door.
Don't look back.
Babysitters. How early can you get here? How late can you stay?
Yeah.
Guilt is kind of pointless though, right? Ultimately, it's just a negative cycle of shame and despair. Never leads you to a good place.
Yeah, it's called being Irish, Jer.
Exactly.
It's not what they told me in maths when I was 8 years of age.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you're trying to chisel that off. And I do wonder what it would be like, because ours have no experience of that whole, like, they don't know any of the songs or any of the rituals. But I mean, I presume I'm passing on the guilt by, like, oh, there are people who don't have any food and you're throwing this back at me here. What's that? So I say I deliver and calmly and rationally all the time. But I there's loads of little things you do all the time that you really would take back instantly if you could. How do you just have to make an accommodation with it.
I think, sorry, I don't want to labour the point about the guilt, right? Because it certainly wasn't a factor with the weekend just gone. And actually, as Nathan says, it probably gets more, it's probably more of a thing when they're a bit younger, where you're just getting used to the parenting bit. Like, I don't know, I certainly feel a need to connect with the kids a lot, or that they have a connection, or that you're there to do things with them a lot. So I suppose with that, in the times when that doesn't happen, then you're like, oh, maybe there was a bit of a misstep. But like I said, look, you're absolutely right, Jared. It's based in there's no good that comes of it. It's based in no reality at all. When I reflect on my own experience growing up and the amount of like parent time you get versus what we put into them, it's like worlds apart.
I was just going to ask that. Are we too present? Like by present, I obviously include the times where we're sitting there on our phone in the same room as them. That is a moment of actually being present. Like, are we too present with our kids?
So do you mean, is there a chance when you're on your deathbed that you might say to yourself, I wish I'd spent less time with my kids?
Well, no, but maybe they would wish we spent less time with them.
I really don't think, well, they may in their teenage years, if you're trying to remain present, but I can't imagine they would look back on their years, the years from which they can actually derive memory and think to themselves, he really was around way too often. Like, unless you're not the kind of parent who your presence is advantageous to the development of your children. I mean, that's a problem, and it's a problem of different sort entirely. But I will hope, God, I hope, no, it's not guaranteed, but that if I speak to my two boys when they're in their 20s or 30s or 40s, say, like, what was it like having me around every day? You would hope that they will look back on it with a huge degree of fondness. If they don't, what a shitty waste of time this has been.
When you're talking to them through the prison window, Dave, is that the?
Well, yeah, look, I'm not sure why I'll end up in prison, but anybody could end up there for whatever reason. No, well, oh God, I hope it won't be them. When I look back at incidents that I felt guilty about, like there's specific incidents of, like there was one time when my eldest was very young. He pretty much learned to crawl while sitting on a bed over a 4-second period when my back was turned. And next of all, I heard an almighty thump, and he was bawling, and he had just the enormous lump on his forehead, like a golf ball sized lump on his forehead. And I carried that incident around with me for a long time. I was like, you couldn't keep an eye on him long enough to stop him rolling off a bed. Now, he was one of those immobile children, which they all are until a certain point. He wasn't going anywhere. And then he decided this was his moment, that he was going to show me that he was capable of being on the move. And my back was turned. But again, like that's just every parent has been in that boat where their children have been hurt because you've neglected them for like a tiny amount of time. But as you say, it was pointless. But I carried that with me for weeks and weeks, and now 8 years on, still think of it every so often.
That's good that you probably introduce some checks and balances to the next time, but then you can't take it too far and be like, oh, you can never go out, you can never play sport, you can never be on the road, you can, I guess it'd be regular behaviors that would be the thing that causes the most recurring deep-seated guilt, right? When you
like
constantly lose the rag.
Yeah.
Exactly, in the same situation when like you're supposed to be the adult.
Are you still flying off the handle as often as you used to?
No, don't think so. Definitely got better at that.
Just slightly less often.
I know, I'd say it's far less often now.
Who's counting? Who's counting?
They are.
The kid and your wife.
They're definitely counting. Remember that time you did this thing? I was like, no, don't reckon, no recollection of that whatsoever.
I was accused of being grumpy yesterday. I was accused of being grumpy lately yesterday, which I found not based on evidence or fact. It got my back up, I must say. I found it deeply unfair. I made that point to the person in question.
Where's your evidence of that? Where's your evidence of that?
Yeah. It's like, I'm not grumpy, you're grumpy. But yeah, I merely pointed out that I was grumpy in that moment because he had done this.
That narrows the number.
Not my fault.
To extend it over a 5 or 4 day period, I thought was grossly unfair.
And you pointed that out very rationally, Dave. You had a rational conversation.
I spoke in the sort of tone I'm using with you three currently.
You did in your arse.
No, I actually did. I said I don't think that's very fair. I will naturally take a grumpy tone with you when you do what you've just done to your brother. That's always going to happen, and I don't make any apologies for that. But to say that over the last 3 or 4 days, when I actually feel like I've been in great form because the weather's been good and the two boys have been well behaved and things are going okay, I thought that was disingenuous. Didn't use that word though.
That's a good opportunity to teach them the word disingenuous.
Yeah, it really is.
Right, some correspondence. We'll come back to this. Hey, I've been listening to the podcast since the start, says Alan, even though I only became a father in 2020. Always enjoyed it. Glad you're back. I was listening on the way home from the hospital after my wife gave birth to our second son. Dave's story of quietly watching his two boys playing had me tearing up. My eldest, so weird saying that, is going on 3 in July. How do we deal with him feeling left out? We're doing the present from the baby to the toddler when he gets home from hospital. And I'll be trying to spend some one-on-one time with the first son after creche. Any other tips that you've noticed that have worked well? Keep up with the podcast. It's a great listen. Come on, Alan. Thanks for that.
Alan's in that, sorry,
at
he's
offtheball.com.
He's then in that window, isn't he, post-birth, where you just cry at everything. Like if he teared up just listening to that story, I can relate to. I've told you that story before, where I was just weeping on a plane over to cover a Premier League game for
What
you
were you
guys.
watching? What was the movie?
I was watching Wonder.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with
Wonder?
fairness, that's like don't watch that probably.
The air steward had to ask me if I was okay. I was like, well, yeah, I'm fine. But it was like days or weeks after my youngest had been born, so I was still in that like postnatal. Emotions are not quite under the surface. They're actually starting to spill over in a very public way. So yeah, I can definitely relate to Alan there. Yeah, we all did the present, didn't we? From the older child to the newborn, and you just have to try and make a conscious effort. Like it's 100% that there's a X amount of attention that you and your wife have to give. 100% of that attention has been previously focused on one child. There is no more attention to be given, so it stands to reason that a portion of that 100% will be taken. So you just have to try and manage that as best you can. But I would say he doesn't need to necessarily worry about the opening few weeks, because he will be the main man for his eldest child for that period of time, won't he? Like his wife will be pretty much taken up with everything that's happening with the newborn, and he can just focus all his attention on his son.
What's the gap?
3 years.
Nearly 3. Yeah.
It probably takes care of itself a little bit with that gap. It's probably up to 5-6 years. It's a bit more difficult because they're at such different stages. But like the youngest one just is sort of dragged everywhere with the 3-year-old, aren't they? So they just become automatically inseparable because they do the same things all of the time.
Yeah, they're close enough to being Irish twins. Close enough.
There's 22 months between our first two, and this is not going to be of any consolation to Alan, and I will apologise to that for that in advance, but it's a real point. The first one has definitely not got over the fact that the second one arrived, that the second one is still here. Honestly, like, and I can tell the second one's nature, that it's not in her nature to be, combative, right? Like, is pretty normally relatively easygoing. Very nice person, etc. First kid is a lovely person in so many ways as well. In actually, genuinely, in every other way, but has just this like block when it comes to the younger sibling. And
how old is the younger sibling now?
They're 6 and 6.5 and 4.5. Okay,
so he's had 4.5 years to get over this.
Another one since.
I genuinely, and another one since, and they're both like crazy about the third one. They're like, oh, we're all in, but there's no threat to anybody there. I honestly think that will continue forever.
So would they play with each other?
They do when they do. Generally, it's on the elder one's terms, and the elder one will be the one that will, if there's a bit of a row breaks out or anything like that, it'll generally be coming from that direction. And if the mood isn't good, if there's a bit of tiredness, there's a bit of hunger, and there's somebody to be on the end of that, it'll be his younger sister. So I don't know, maybe like when they're 18, 20, 25, 30.
Alan needs to be worried that there will be a reaction of some sort. And
I think it's inevitable.
He has to try and build in some internal increase in tolerance for such behavior, and try and draw on that if and when his child does lose the plot with a little more regularity. He just needs something in his own mind telling him, look, we thought about this in advance, we talked about this, we just need to give him a little more leeway before we kind of come down maybe on him like we might have done in the past, because it's such an upheaval. I mean, you are the main man for 3 years, every minute of every day of your life, and suddenly you're not. And I mean, I can't remember what it was like for me, but there's only 15 months between me and my brother. So I was probably too young to kind of remember if I was put out at all. And like I said to you guys before, every time I ask my mother and father, do you remember what this was like for you guys? They've never once been able to give me an example of remembering anything. And
You think
I'm
they do
already,
remember? They just don't want to tell you, Dave.
no, I just don't think they can remember anything, but it happens to me as well.
Yeah.
I'm asked about stuff. Dylan would ask, my eldest would ask me about some stuff, and I'm like, I really can't remember. He's only 8. So I can imagine what it's like for parents of a 43-year-old. But there's going to be some blowback. He just needs to be ready to try and deal with it.
The one-on-one time, by the way, sorry, just as a general point, I think we've said it before, but absolutely, 100%. As much of that as you can do, it's definitely, we find it invaluable when with the very few opportunities we get to do it. Like it really, it's really powerful. The present, by the way, I sort of was laughing a little bit internally when I heard about the present, because we did that. I think everybody does it. And in my mind, the reason I'm laughing is that we were such idiots because we thought, well, we'll just give this present from this kid to this kid. And like that will look after it for life. That will mean that they'll be best of friends. He'll be appreciative of that forever and a day. And that's not the case.
It doesn't
Throw
work.
it back in your face.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much. If there was nothing in the world, if they had nothing, if they didn't have Christmas and birthdays and relatives giving them shit all the time, and you gave them this one thing that was like, you know, a flower in a desert, then maybe they'd be in any way appreciative of the baby. But like 10 seconds after they started playing with the present, they'd be like, hang on, this shitting, puking, mewling thing is living with us? No. Bring him back. He's not coming. No, bring him back. That's what it's like.
So best of luck, Alan.
Yeah. If anybody else wants any questions answered badly, dadcast@offtheball.com. You can tweet us at dadcastpod.
By the way, I don't really believe there's anything you can do. I don't think there's any advice that we can give him. I think you just have to get on with it. Like that's going to unfold the way it unfolds. You can give a little bit of guidance. I
think Dave's point there to take a beat, count to 10, and if that doesn't work, count to 10 again.
I mean the overall. I don't mean that. I mean the overall sense of, oh my God, when are you bringing this thing back?
Yeah, there's no way to mitigate the severity of the child's reaction to the situation, but you can mitigate your own.
Yeah.
So that's maybe what Alan needs to focus on.
Adon has been in touch about dogs we were talking about on the last episode or 2 episodes ago. I'm not sure. Very close in this house to getting a dog. We have 2 girls, a teenager and one close to 10, so a good age. On Dave's pros and cons point, etc. There's no way he would have had kids if he went through the same process. 2 or 3 years of sleepless nights, cleaning up shit, hardship, 20 years of huge expense, and they live in your house eating your food for 30 plus years. At least the dog will come and greet you with excitement at the door.
He does make a valid point. I guess I don't see myself ever having the same unconditional love for a dog that I have for my children.
No. And also, eventually, the kids stop shitting on the ground. Sorry, I just realized
they do.
in a hotel lobby and lots of people around. There's no context what I'm saying at all.
Yeah, well, look, when your children are older, you don't have to continue to pick their shit off the ground on a path outside your house. Sure you don't? Pretty sure you don't.
Days later.
Days later. Whereas, like, no matter how old your dog is, you still have to do that. You don't have to walk your kids either when they get to a certain age.
You know, I mean, you should definitely get them some exercise in their lives. I think it's a good idea for people at that age, definitely. I think it's fair. We haven't done anything about it, but it's in the ether. So as soon as it happens, I will let you know how well or badly it's going. There was another couple of topics there, Adrian, that you wanted to talk about in terms of like chiseling out the time to make sure that you actually spend with the kids when they're like, oh, come and play this game.
Yeah. I don't know if you feel this, but I have I mentioned guilt? I mentioned guilt today at any point. I feel a little bit guilty, and I you know, where they go, can we play this game? Can we, you know, do this thing? It could be a jigsaw, could be, you know, if I was getting into chess now, which I don't know how to play, which makes it a very interesting game. Could be anything, game, football, whatever you're having yourself, and particularly with the work from home scenario, like that can be difficult to give the time and to keep at it. Like I feel as if, you know, there are times for sure where I can sort of give 5 minutes, but it's never really enough, and they're kind of like And if, and the more than the point we were just discussing, if one of them sees you making a puzzle with the other one, then you got to be doing something with them, and there's just not enough not enough time to go around. So I don't know if you feel that or not, and also keeping the when you do. I find after 10 minutes of playing some sort of a kid's game, my attention span is gone.
You're bored.
I'm bored. Yeah.
And also, particularly when they're young, like you have to let them win. And there's like a meltdown when they don't win. Like I've just spent 10 minutes playing this. Like now I need to speed it up, so I need to actually go and win. Otherwise, we're going to be here all day because we're going to get the hang of this. Like, yeah, I'm the exact same with the youngest of. I'm full of enthusiasm when it starts, but like the imaginary rules that they make up as you're going along, and I was like this game, it should be done in 15 minutes, but we're still here 40 minutes later, and you're not going to win, and you're getting angrier and angrier, and like the joy has gone out of it, and I've lost interest like within 4 minutes of this. So, God,
we're big fans of Guess Who in this house, and when I say we, the two boys more so than me, like when they sit down, the first question they ask is not related to the gender of the person they have. I'm just going, how many times have I told you? Always ask, is it a man? Or always ask, is it a woman first? Don't ask if you want a genuine chance of winning. Do not ask me if they have a beard. Okay? I've told you this 100 times.
Yeah,
no, I feel your pain, Dave. I feel your pain.
I can imagine Dave like toppling the table upside down.
If your first question is not gender related, I am going to win. Okay? So if you want a real chance of victory, do not get the first question wrong. Apart from that, though, it's all good. Discover Ireland as well. We do a bit more board games these days, and that's always good.
What's that?
Yeah.
Discover Ireland is basically just a map of Ireland, and you pick 6 cards out of a random pack, and you have to travel through those 6 towns to an end destination, and whoever gets through all their towns first wins. So it's like a snakes and ladders type game, but there is actually a little bit of learning involved. You do learn place names and city names and town names and where our ports and airports are, and there's roadblocks and that kind of stuff, and they can actually read the cards as well. There's a lot of, so if you have like Cashel is one of your towns, for example, it'll give you about 8 lines on the history of Cashel, so the kids can read that as well. So there's a little bit of educational value as well. Any board games from suggestions from our listeners would be welcomed.
They only get longer as well. They only get longer as they get older. So like we every Christmas get a couple of board games and go all in for the sort of week after Christmas. So we had both Monopoly and the Game of Life. And at least in the Game of Life, there's an end point that's you can get to. 45 minutes you're done. Monopoly, oh my God. Like we're going around, kids refusing to buy anything at all. Don't want to spend their money.
To buy stuff.
I don't want to spend my money.
But that's part of the rules. We have a rule where
that we had to change the rules then afterwards, because what the problem was, we'd be there for an hour and I just spent all my money, bought half the places. The kids are having a meltdown as they land on Aylesbury Road yet again, which I own, have my hotel on.
You never get planning on Aylesbury Road these days.
No.
Board games are shit. I'm sorry, but the reason they're called board games is because they're fucking boring.
But the board game is just the thing to sit the family at the table together for an extended period of time, of which the first half an hour might be joyful family time. The second half an hour is, scarring.
Recrimination, anger. Bitterness.
Some of them are lifesaver on trips and stuff like Uno, Dobble.
Uno, yeah.
Love Dobble. Big
Dobble's
fan.
a brilliant game.
Yeah.
Fun for all the family.
Until you're consistently been beaten by your 6-year-old. That is a very humbling experience.
Me versus 6-year-old versus 4-year-old. There's no knowing who's going to win that game.
Well, that's good. Double is over in like 8 seconds, though, right?
No, it depends on how many you could.
No, you could have 50 cards.
How many cards you want, depending. That can dictate how long it'll last.
Well, look, I think the thing about Double is, again, there's an end point. It's very short. You can play one game.
Yeah, quick fire ones are better. Yes, Monopoly, you're asking for trouble.
There's a shorter version of Monopoly. Have you seen that one? It comes in like a deck of cards, so you don't have to have the big rigmarole and the stuff that you're talking about, Nathan. It's like a travel Monopoly.
You can get that, yeah.
I'm not saying it's quick. It's just quicker.
I mean,
we have the Ireland Monopoly, which does, raise a lot of questions as the kids are going around wondering why one place is more expensive than the other place. And why does our friend live in the place that's really cheap compared to the really expensive place over here? Like,
No, you're raising socialists. Good man, Nathan. Yeah.
Why can't they live there too?
When
there's a means of production.
When there's a fist fight over who gets to be the iron and who gets to be the dog before the bloody game has even started, you know you're in big trouble before you even begin to introduce the concepts of greed and envy and bankruptcy and being a miser and a refusal to engage and cooperate, a refusal to pay out on your debts. Then the monopoly just only goes one way, and it's usually south.
But Monopoly's good when they get a bit older because at least the tiers you're causing them by beating them, and there's some life lessons they can learn. Like, I definitely get way too much joy out of winning at Monopoly and the tiers that will follow and the little learnings that they have to get along the way.
I find
Logan Roy over here.
I find them not competitive with the kids. I don't mind them winning. Although I think every so often it's no harm for them to lose, if I'm being honest. But the competitiveness where I actually get pretty pissed off if I end up losing to my wife, I'm like, I would throw a huff, like, easy.
Oof. What's an Adrian Barry huff?
Just a lot of quiet slamming of things and like doing things louder than I'd stop there. I'll stop there.
And then the last topic this week, what do you do if your kids are using words to describe people like fat, smelly, any broad racial terms, those words where you rightly or wrongly think, oh, I need to jump in here and shut this down?
Are they using those words because they've heard you use them?
I threw that into the thing as a point of discussion, and absolutely not. Certainly in many circumstances, and like, I just don't know where to go. So I give you the example that triggered it off. Now, this isn't the only example, so don't take it absolutely literally. But I was bringing the 4-year-old to school the other day, walked past the bus, and she turns around and goes, "Oh, look at that big fat bus there." And my instinct was to go, "That's not a great word to use." And so in my head, I'm like, well, if I don't tell you that that's not a great word to use, and then suddenly we're in a different circumstance and you're going to say the same thing, I don't really want you doing that. So I felt as if I should say, listen, we just try not to use that word as much as we can. Not unique to that, but it's a pretty tame, good example to be able to broadcast. So yeah, I was just interested to see, because like, obviously they pick up things all over the place, and I actually find that the influences that they're starting to get are coming far more from their mates and outside of the house. So that's my way of saying that, not my parenting, you blame somebody else. Not really, but do you get the point that like they say stuff that can be that we wouldn't use, words that we wouldn't use that might be inappropriate, and what's the acceptable way? What's the way to deal with that?
You're not worried. You don't have an issue specifically with the fact that they've called an inanimate object fat. You just have an apprehension that they may then say that about a person.
Correct.
Please tell me that's the
on
case.
behalf of the boss.
Correct,
Yes,
correct,
okay.
correct.
I just wanted to get that on the record.
Dave, for Christ's sake.
I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's obviously appropriate if you feel they're using a word that could be used to describe a person and would be offensive, to step in and say, look, maybe we don't use that language. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of being a parent, isn't it? Now, when they can turn around and say and pinpoint a specific example where you use that word, well, not only then, I suppose, is an opportunity to tell them that it's not the right word to be used, but it's an opportunity for some self-reflection as well.
Some learning.
Because there are words that we use that are offensive that they could pick up, and you'd be horrified if you heard your own child use it. So we can all have a little look at ourselves sometimes and go, yeah, that is a word in my daily to weekly to monthly vocabulary that really should not be there. So let's improve. Let's be better.
Nah, it's political correctness gone mad, isn't it? All these snowflakes. What are they taking offense at?
Well, look,
there are people like typing that in anxiously. angrily typing that we've muted you. Don't worry, we'll never see those tweets. But yeah, look, you have to have conversation with language all the time because it's constantly evolving and changing, and shit that was acceptable that when we were kids that you would have said that would have been fairly common. We had a relatively high profile example on our team recently, and you know, you just have to be fucking careful with your language.
I actually, funny enough, and I've made this point years ago, which I'm finding more of a struggle as the years go by, but I don't have such a big issue with them like cursing and stuff, as long as they're not like using it in a way to, like, I mean, it's not as if they're going around like cursing like sailors. That's probably inappropriate. Sailors are a very well behaved bunch of people.
Now even I feel you're a snowflake there, Adrian.
Yeah, that's right. No.
Sorry, hang on a second. You know, famously, George Hamilton did do exactly what Adrian's just done.
Oh, did he?
He was hosting the tennis commentary on RTE TV, and he wasn't really a regular live TV host. And they came back to him and said, "Okay, you've got 2 minutes to fill here." And then I was like, "Oh, maybe you missed a bit earlier on where John McEnroe was disqualified for swearing like a sailor." Oh, sorry, sailors.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know how. So you don't mind if you're, say, your warring eldest pair, if the eldest one goes, whichever, just fuck off.
No, what I'm saying specifically is I don't want them to say that anyway, right? Like, by way of, I don't want them to use it in an abusive way. Like, you know, if he stubs his toe or something, it goes, "Oh, for fuck's sake."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel exercised really about that.
I don't have a huge problem with that, because the only reason why two would say it is because they've heard me say that. Like, if I am making their dinner and I burn my finger on the pan, or I drop the dinner just as I plated it up, you have a very good chance I'm going to, "Oh, for F's sake, you stupid." And so if they then go and do that, I just cannot muster the energy to become annoyed by that. But I will say to them, "Lads, better we don't use that kind of language." More so that it will cloud the way people think of you outside of this family if they hear you swearing like that regularly. And it might have them think about you in a way that's unfair on you, that isn't accurate. So if you want to put your best self forward, maybe don't be dropping F-bombs here, there, and everywhere. But I can't give out to them for swearing if they have hurt themselves or something. But I do have a problem with them abusing each other with foul language, because they haven't heard me say that. Like, they've never once heard me calling somebody an effer or whatever the case might be. So I think you've kind of summed it up well there, Adrian. Like, they hurt themselves.
They've never said it in an aggressive way.
Exactly. Like, if I heard what the older guy saying, you know, "F you, you little effer," I'd be really annoyed by that, because that's not something they've heard in the house. But when you're in pain and they're just copying me, very hard to have a problem with that.
I'm sure they've heard the other one in the house as well from time to time when you're talking about like people at work.
No, it might be. They may if I'm sitting down watching a match.
Yeah.
And a team I've been devoted to for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
And some donkey of a centre half, he shall remain nameless, throws in. Sorry, apologies to all donkeys out there. But, I'm not sure how many donkeys we have amongst our Dadcast listenership. I suppose that is using an F word as a term of abuse, so they could have picked it up there, all right.
Yeah.
That happens in our house when Leinster matches are on a lot.
What are you cursing about?
Yeah.
I can't believe we didn't win by 70 points this week.
Typically towards the latter stages of the Heineken Cup, but no, it's been definitely been repeated back in that specific context a lot.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of it at not a huge amount of it, but out in Tala at the Rovers games a couple of times recently. We've been sat in front of a group who really shouldn't be sitting, because I'm pretty sure it sounds like a family zone we almost sit in. But oh my god, the language and the abuse of their own players.
Rovers fans.
Just, yeah, I was like, holy shit.
And do you have you any inclination to say, "Here, do you mind"?
Well, they were probably a bit too far back. They weren't sitting in the row directly behind. I don't like I was definitely the last time going, there was one or two C words there that's probably not appropriate.
Right.
Yeah,
That's not one I have to say that I'd be promoting too much.
I commentated on
no.
the Rovers Bows game a few weeks ago. I couldn't get over the vitriol and the abuse that was being directed by Bohemians fans towards the Shamrock Rovers players as they left the field after their pre-match warm-up, as the subs went in after having kept themselves warm at half-time. I was in the commentary box listening to this, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm glad my boys are not here, because it was, and maybe I'm just a bit of a snowflake when it comes to that, because I just haven't seen enough of it. I've been lived a sheltered life in terms of that, but obviously I've seen it at Premier League games and European games. But yeah, it's very difficult to stand up in the stand in Tallow or Dalymount or Richmond Park, wherever you happen to be, and say, lads, could you mind toning it down a little there? Take a brave man to be that person.
That's not me, obviously. I don't mind it too much, in that, like, I think going is part of the atmosphere, and like they love people cursing, you know, the excitement that somebody behind them is saying the F word and they're all like, it's yeah, there's just one or two words that you're like, really not appropriate in a football stadium, whether there's kids there or not. And like, also, if you're roaring it out, you're just kind of trying to show off a little bit here, whereas everyone around you just thinks, what a dick.
Also, the point about like abusing your own players. I mean, I would be, as you know, I'd obviously bring the kids to loads of matches, and I'd be saying to them, like, don't be, because you hear, I mean, not to mind abusing your own players, you hear obviously fans all the time abusing the opposite team. So
respect the kicker.
Well, whatever, it could be any match, Nathan. Not your snobbery, it could be any game. And I would sort of be saying to them, listen, there's no need to be. They'll be asking about that, like, oh, you know, people like shouting abuse. This just what we do. And I would say to them, like, you know, ideally, don't be roaring abuse at anybody. Like, if you want to let a few roars out just to support your own team, go for it. I mean, it's one challenge to have them not shouting abuse at the opposition team. I mean, if they're listening to people and looking at people in their vicinity roaring abuse at their own team.
No, it's funny. I'd be way better behaved at that when I'm at a match than, like, as Dave was saying, when you're at home watching it.
Well, you have a public profile to protect, Nathan, of course.
Well, of course. I generally don't try not to think about that, Adrian. I try to go about my daily business without thinking about that, you know.
It's hard to get away, hard to escape the fame, though, Nathan.
It sure is. Yeah. No, if I'm in front of the TV, all right, I'd be getting quite angry at times.
Right. So what's the no lessons, keep swearing, just don't use the C word. You should be grand.
Fuck it.
You're going to get kicked out of that hotel.
Yeah, I'm not even staying in this hotel. I did that thing where I'm staying in a really shitty hotel. In fact, even shittier than I first thought I'd booked. I turned up in my hotel and they're like, oh no, this isn't your hotel. There's another one about 2 miles down the road that you're staying in. I was like, oh, how do I get there? It's like, oh, you'll have to get a taxi. And you go, oh, but these 6 people have all done the same thing. So they're getting this, like, you're pulling a bit of a fucking trick here, aren't you? When I can see from the airport the name of your hotel, but that's not the one I booked into. So yeah. Anyways, don't stay in the Holiday Inn Express. Manchester Airport.
We're not getting any freebies from them. Dadcast is in partnership with Nivea Men. Want to feel great in your skin? Nivea Men has you covered, from sensitive tailored skincare to cleansing and anti-age. Try Ireland's #1 men's skincare brand. Get in touch, dadcast@offtheball.com or at dadcastpod, and we will see you next week, folks.
Dadpod. Is this a video thing as well?
Doesn't have a name.
Podcast. Midlife crisis.
Paddy Daddy.
Midlife crisis. Dadcast.
That's not bad, actually.
Dadcast with Nivea Men. Try Ireland's #1 skincare brand.